I'm not sure exactly where to begin this. I can maybe start about talking about like transmaxxing in general. We allow people to improve their lives even if they do not fit the traditional view of what it means to be transgender.
My thinking right now is that we're getting into a point where there's two competing things going on right now. Artificial intelligence, and you'll be able to put on Oculus Rift glasses and you'll have all that kind of stuff going on. He thinks that's probably within the next 3 to 5 years, and then after that we just go further. So I think that you're going to see transmaxing and this whole AI girlfriend sex bot or virtual sex system kind of thing competing, and to see which one kind of gains dominance, or both of them will kind of rise up. Like, what do you guys think about that?
Personally, I am not at all appealed to the notion of some sex robot. I want to have sex or have fun with a real human and have this connection. And this is kind of a part of the fun, that you're dealing with a real person that feels sensations and all that. And I think especially when you're a male, this really appeals to people. This thing where you're
I totally agree with you. Like, I'm currently in my early 40s. How about you?
I am 30 in my late or my
Late
early
30s?
early 30s.
Okay, so yeah, so from what I've spoken to younger guys anywhere from the teens into their early 20s, and a lot of them, I prefer a real person. I prefer a human like being that I can interact with. But a lot of them are starting to say, I want to have a relationship with Siri and my phone. And I'm just kind of like, okay, like, but that's what they want. So that's why I think that there's going to be both things competing at the same time.
I can see why some people get into that, and it also kind of depends on exactly what you're looking for. That maybe some people just want a physical sensation, while other people want to have the relationship part. And then there is the elephant in the room, and it is reproduction. And this is actually sort of a disadvantage both for transmaxxing and for this sex robot thing, is that while it is effective for all of allowing people to get laid, it is less effective for allowing people to reproduce, at least currently with current technology.
Now, in terms of transmaxing, you want to help humanity, you want to basically create a solution for what's going on in the sexual marketplace. So when did you start writing this, and how did it evolve? Like, you've written many versions now. So how did it start with version 1, and like what's changed from there to now?
Yeah, I can actually bring up version 1. But this is the first I uploaded, and this was uploaded 2020, 10, 15.
Tell me, you can describe it. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll link it in general too.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I see it. I'm just worried if I click on it, it'll take me to some other page and take me away from the chat.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, yeah, you can compare these versions. I don't actually remember the exact changes. The thing is, basically, the basic premise and the basic focus is kind of the same for version 1 and the latest version, which is 11. Like, there isn't this big...
okay, but let me ask you, so when did you start writing this?
The subreddit was created October 6th, 2019.
Okay. So as you were writing this, what was the community size back then, and like what was the reception that you got?
Originally on Transmaxxing I only have like a few hundred members, and I also had the Discord came later and got to a few hundred too. And
like, how quickly are things growing now, pretty much?
It actually grew faster initially on Reddit, and then it kind of faded off. And on this Discord has had actually a steady growth or more gradual. So this Discord actually ended up taking over because people prefer to use this Discord instead of the subreddit. And I should probably explain that when I started the subreddit, the focus on transmaxxing had kind of changed. Originally, the idea was that I was just looking for people to get laid as an alternative strategy. But now transmaxxing took more focus on the quality of the sex, because there are some people who have a sexual preference for being feminine or being female. They get turned on by that. And this is kind of controversial in
autophilia, yeah. No, so you're saying basically that people are just transmaxing because of the sexual fetishization of it?
This is kind of what started it, because I was actually part of another community that discussed that, and people there were very anti-transition. So I wanted to create a space that was more transition positive. So this kind of merged with the idea that you can get laid too, so we will have these benefits you can get from transitioning, because a lot of people focus on the negative, and this is what really got it going. So then it became more similar to like the traditional trans spaces. There is still difference, because this space is only male to female. So we have some FTMs here, but the community doesn't really support it, and I do not believe it is beneficial for society, at least. There is also a question involved if individuals really benefit from it.
Okay.
We are sort of similar to other trans spaces in terms of like what types of people that are here. But it is kind of diverse. But I think the difference is that it is culturally different. People here tend to be more this fortune culture, where they are more real. And this space is also more focused on real benefits you get from transitioning, so we don't really focus on gender identity.
So you were saying about transitioning that something was difficult. Go ahead.
The thing with transitioning is that there are a lot of negativity regarding transition, and people often focus on the negative effects. And sure, there are negatives, like I myself, I am not transitioning. But I think we needed more focus on the positives you can get from transitioning, which is not just reduction in gender dysphoria. You have all these other benefits too, and this is kind of the point of the Transmaxxing manifesto. You can actually get real life benefit from transitioning, not just about some abstract gender identity or just merely reducing dysphoria. Because people will often object to having some medical treatment just because of some mental illness. So for example, there is this body identity integrity disorder where people feel an urge to cut off a limb. But in this case it is not really justified or not enough reason to just cut off your limb, because there is no benefit to doing so, and it is like actively harmful because you are getting disabled.
What are the new developments, and like where do you see the community going? I mean, people are interested in this topic. They just kind of want to see where this is heading in the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So currently we're trying to expand and get more notoriety, but we do work on the Transmaxxing manifesto. I think we're trying to get more guides coming out on certain things like voice training, guides for relationships and getting into relationships.
Okay, so in terms of your transition, when did you start, and how is that going, and why did you do it? Was it just because of to gain all the advantages of transmaxxing, or was it some other reason?
So I started HRT about a year ago now, and I did it mainly because the two main reasons was I experienced HTP, autophilia, and I also felt like a failure as a man. So it just kind of worked together, and it I wanted tits, so it all worked together.
Okay, and so far, what's your experience been like?
It's been amazing. It's one of the best decisions I made in my life.
Can you get a little bit more detail? I don't know from what do you have a YouTube channel? Do you have an online presence that I can kind of, because it sounds like you've worked on voice training, and it sounds like you've worked on appearance and all that kind of stuff too.
Yes, I've worked on quite a bit of stuff, and I don't have a YouTube just yet. I'm gonna work on a YouTube. Because we have like a website going and we're building on that. So
Okay. So in terms of autogynephilia, I think
Autogynephilia and dysphoria often go together. So a lot of people who have gender dysphoria also have autogynephilia. But there are people who only have autogynephilia, and some people only have traditional dysphoria, where you actively dislike your male body.
okay. So there was an interview with two female psychologists, and they were talking about this, and they said that there was a group that was affected by autism spectrum disorder potentially, and then there was another fourth group. I can't remember exactly what point they made, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's not correct. Like, it's not groups. What we have is we have factors that makes it more or less likely to transition. And this is not well studied yet. But for example, if you have autogynephilia, you are more likely to transition. While, and same, if you have gender dysphoria, you're also more likely to transition. If you have children and are able to have children, if you want children, you're probably less likely to transition, and so on.
Okay. My experience in the Manosphere generally has been, I started off back in 2013 when I discovered MGTOW and the men's rights movement. And I was kind of involved with both of those for a while. And then there were pickup artists back then, but it's not as big as it is today. And there was also True Force Loneliness, which were, the precursors to incels. And then that ended up becoming the incel movement. Now I think that, there were Sigma males. That was another kind of offshoot. I think Transmaxxing is kind of the newest thing on the scene. And so what happens is every time you see something new, the previous groups in the Manosphere start to attack the new thing because they're so afraid of it, because they fear that it's going to start to take attention away from them. So, Transmaxxing is still very, very new. Like, the channels that are out there, like on YouTube, like Cat's channel, they're gaining attention, but it's very, very slow going. And I think that at some point, if it kind of goes and goes and goes, it'll start to kind of grow and become bigger, and then at that point it'll start to become more socially acceptable. There are all kinds of barriers in terms of, society at large accepts people who have quote unquote gender dysphoria to transition, but they don't accept people who choose to transition just because they can get social and sexual advantages. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
The solution is that if you transition, you always tell other people that you had gender dysphoria, because this makes it more likely that they will accept you transitioning. So if you don't have gender dysphoria, you should lie to everyone, and this is the solution for now.
Okay, so that's just, but I think that's kind of a temporary thing. It's kind of like, people who were gay in the 90s and 80s, they were closeted. They wouldn't tell people, oh, that's just my friend, right? They would say that that's their boyfriend or girlfriend. They would just kind of hide. So I think it's almost as if, transmaxers have to live in like a closet, so to speak, where they can't actually tell people what their real intentions are, which is kind of tragic.
I mean, it's up to everyone if they're going to come out as a pure non-dysphoric transmaxer. Some people might decide that I want to be honest or whatever, but we should push people to that. And also it's not equivalent, because nobody can look at you in your brain, but if you have sex with men, other people can find out that you are doing that. Because it's behavior, it's not something in your brain that nobody can observe.
Okay, gotcha. I'm just looking at this from a cultural lens, and in terms of how it's going to impact society large, going forward. So, let's assume birth rates, fertility rates continue to collapse. So, the sexual marketplace dynamics are still out of whack. There was an article that came out, I think it was a week ago, it said 60% of young men under the age of 30 not sexually active, while only 30% of women are not sexually active under the age of 30. So that's, well, we don't even know if that's correct, but let's assume it is. So that means that 30% of males, they can't get any attention at all. So, people would always say, oh, that's going to destabilize society. But now we have porn and we have all these video games and other distractions that are keeping men neutered. Plus, we also have drops in testosterone levels. So there are a lot of things that are actually pushing, like making sure that these males are under control. So just because they're not getting like sexual gratification doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to push for it on the same ways that we would have thought. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, it is a very common misconception that people are easily rebelling against the system and against the government. Real people, if the government knows what they are doing, will mobilize the population against outsiders. Like, for example, you might embrace nationalism and militarism, and then you send people to fight in wars somewhere. And they can like pillage there and cause destruction and take off their anger on outsiders.
I agree with you. In the past, that's how we kept things stable. We had one group of men over there and another group of men competing, and then some of them dying off, so that would increase the available pool of women for the men that survived.
Yeah, but I don't think this is like a good long-term strategy, because when we have this competition between states, it's actually kind of dangerous, and it prevents us from doing what's actually good in terms of having people live good lives, because there is this constant competition where we have to spend everything on the military, because otherwise we get conquered.
We can't afford the destruction anymore because of nuclear weapons and all the powerful weapons that we have now. So in a way, nuclear weapons have kind of been a deterrent, but they've also, in a way, screwed us over because we couldn't have wars to kind of, heal off the excess male population and kind of rebalance.
But in terms of game theory, nuclear weapons doesn't mean you shouldn't invade other countries. The reason why it hasn't happened is because the United States is a democracy, so they are not able to subject the people to a nuclear holocaust to conquer the world. But if United States was a dictatorship, there will be probably a nuclear war because they will win it. So they will conquer everything and take everything over. And that's the end. Then you have this world government. And you can establish yourself in this other places that they get nuked. So even if you get obliterated, you can just conquer more territory and move there. So you can win a nuclear war. You can build shelters too. So you shelter inside. At least the important people are kept in the bunkers and everything. So you lose some civilians, but the country can move on after these nuclear strikes, and then they can go and conquer these other countries.
What would be your ideal society? You could just snap your fingers and have it created tomorrow.
Yeah, my ideal society will be a world government that is focused on having people live enjoyable lives, and where we also try to expand to other planets in some way, try to establish a footprint on other planets, even if it does require genetic engineering. So the goal is to have people live enjoyable lives on average.
In terms of what that would mean for the sexual marketplace and dynamics between sexes and all of this, transitioning stuff, what would that mean? What would it look like?
My preference, what I think is the best solution, is if you modify humanity. So instead of having males and females, you have hermaphrodites, where everyone is born somewhere in between, almost like boys. And then at the age 13 or 11 or 9, something like that, they undergo female puberty. So they start off as sort of like boys, then they become girls, and then later in life they become males. So in that way you can have everyone experience being a female and the joy that comes with that. And then later in life when they are no longer fertile and not as physically attractive, then they are more suitable as living as males. It is radical, but I think it is the best solution I can think of.
I mean, right now we're seeing testosterone levels drop across the world, and what's happening is a lot of younger, males, their testosterone levels are crashing before they can even go up. So it's creating a lot of feminized males in our society, and because of that, if a woman is exposed to a lot of androestrogens and substances in the environment when she's pregnant with a male, that child is going to get affected. It's going to affect the brain development, genital development. So what's happening right now is we're starting to see the effects of the feminization, and we're starting to see a lack of masculinity in society starting to affect things like the infrastructure, starting to affect industry, because masculinity is being called toxic, and because of that, men are not being they're not being revered and rewarded. So some of them are deciding to feminize themselves, others are just deciding to get away from things that would be considered toxic and masculine. And so there are shortages in industries that require masculine men. I think that's probably a bigger threat, like in the immediate future, because right now what's happening is we're starting to see industries having a very hard time attracting people like welders and electricians, these like masculine trades, and construction people. And so that's starting to cause like inflation to go up.
Yeah, I have an objection here. I do not believe that people don't want to become like welders because they don't want to be like toxically masculine. I believe that these jobs are low status, and because the status is low and males are not attracted to it, and this is like the only reason.
They're not going to get access to women if they become a welder, because women don't want the welder, they want the college educated guy. I totally agree. But at the same time, I think that, it's hard on your body. Like the fact that we haven't had any difficulty in society, like in terms of like warfare, in terms of hardships, it's making men and women softer. Like we're not learning how to tough through things and basically work hard, and not learning to kind of like, grin and bear it and just kind of work really hard and do things. And I wouldn't call that masculine energy, but I would call it like just energy that has to do with productive energy. And a lot of that also comes down to testosterone, because once you have a higher testosterone level, you kind of can deal with greater hardships. So as the testosterone levels are dropping 2.6% a year right now. So I think that's also one of the reasons why we might be seeing like transmaxing becoming more popular, because of hormone levels.
The thing with masculinity is that traditional masculinity, if you embrace that too much, you get killed in like a war or something because you're not rewarded for it. Like, if you look at pretty much every society, all males are like expected to like risk their lives and then like get nothing in return. Like even in the United States, where the tourists are paid, they are like paid less than all other professions. So it's not in your interest to join the military as a male right now, because the wage is too low and the risk is too high. When it comes to like women in like industries, like a lot of jobs can today be done by women, even like in the military. And this is kind of like a stopgap measure if you like convince women that it is like feminist glory to be like a cannon fodder in some war. Like more women will like join there and like base their life in the army for nothing, because they got brainwashed by some like feminist rhetoric. So they can like manipulate these feminists into like basing their lives via some like traditionally male career, where it's not actually beneficial. And we kind of see this now in STEM, where it all is the initiative to get women in STEM. But the thing is like going into STEM today is not really that worthwhile, because we have this like massive oversupply pretty much. And there are not too many jobs where you need like a physics degree.
I think we should probably get back to transmaxing. Is it just going to be everyone creating their own channels going forward?
No.
Online presence?
What we're seeing now is that the people are still here and effective kind of agree with each other. I really hope that we can keep working with Kat, because I like Kat. She's a good person. So I hope that we can bridge our political disagreement. What we will do is that we have to be more authoritarian to like straighten out this agreement. And then I will explain what the correct position is, and we will discuss it within the Politburo and arrive at this is like the correct path forward, and the community as a whole tend to like respect that. Yeah, what we're doing right now is that we are working together in the Politburo, and what I have noticed is that most people in the community likes having like a clear direction of what to do. It is this balance because we do want to allow people to speak and like interact, but at the same time we need to have an official policy and official guidelines for people to follow, because people want to have something to follow, and they don't want to have to like choose between like 20 different people who are they going to listen to. So we need to have something official for the masses to follow when it comes to transmaxing, and I believe this is the path forward. And sure, we can have like minute disagreements, and we can still like try to make a transition focused and like not be politics focused, so we will still have some political diversity, at least on the server. I think the only thing is that it didn't work to have political diversity at the top, and this was what caused the issues. I can explain my plan for transmaxing, and my vision is that I want to make transmaxing way more dominant and a common way of thinking about transition. So I want to grow this and become like a real political player and belong to challenge this like traditional narrative when it comes to transition. And to do it effectively, we need to be united and have to have clear leadership. And you have to have people who speaks well for transmaxing, which is why I push people like Val to join YouTube and make videos too.
Well, I agree. We want to try to make it like a more mainstream kind of idea where it's more of just like a choice you make to benefit your life and none of this other
Political
stuff.
Yeah. You want to avoid politics pretty much.
Yeah, for the most part, yes.
And so how do you see it becoming more mainstream? Like what would need to happen for it to become more mainstream?
What we need to do is what we have kept doing so far, which has worked, which is to we use right now Reddit and Discord, and we need to get into YouTube. And what we have is that we have this Transmaxxing manifesto, which is a very successful writing that got millions of views so far. And that the Transmaxxing subreddit has over 2 million views already. So it is successful what we are doing, and we will continue what has worked before. And we will have to like just straighten up the leadership for the server and make it more united, which has already been done. So there's no problem here with the server, it will work just fine. And then what we'll do also, I will try to make it, instead of just me leading it, which I have been like probably too much of a leader, I will distribute more power to the rest of the Politburo, so we'll work more together. I think what we're doing and what we're planning to do is the right strategy. And I believe that we will be very successful in the future.
So what I think, if you want Transmaxxing to grow in popularity, you need people to start producing content, and you need people to get monetized on YouTube, and they need to start making money. And what that's going to do is that's going to incentivize more people to start producing content. And then eventually the snowball effect will take hold, and you'll have hundreds of content creators all be making money, they'll all be promoting the idea, and the idea will be spreading a lot quicker. If I was Transmaxxing, if I wanted to grow the whole idea, what I would do is I'd start a channel and I'd start producing content every day, would make myself as feminine as possible. If you want it to go mainstream, people are just visually oriented. They want somebody, not necessarily to represent them, they want somebody that kind of attractive. People like attractive faces, regardless of if they're male, female, or somewhere in between. They're drawn to that. And that person would be articulate, would be apolitical for the most part, and they would just promote Transmaxxing for Transmaxxing's sake, not for politics and utopian visions of the future and society and all that kind of stuff. And at that point, it would grow. And then you get more and more people going.
I think you're right here. We need to have someone who like speaks on YouTube, is attractive, well spoken, and has like content people enjoy watching. And we are trying to do that. I think the issue here is that if people are going to like show themselves and there are real bodies and their face and also YouTube, this is like a lot of attention. A lot of people don't want that. So there are a lot of people in our community probably who do not want to make YouTube videos for that reason. Or if they make YouTube videos, they will not show their face. They might use like a computer voice or something. And then it's harder to reach people.
Well, look, you could say that, but I've had over 100 million views and I've not shown my face. So I think, if you have valuable content that people want to hear, it doesn't matter what you look like. You could just be a disembodied face. But if you use your face and you make videos where you actually show your face and you have a look that appeals to a lot of people, it could double, triple, quadruple the number of views that you would get. But that's not necessarily the only thing that people are looking for, right? So yes and no. I mean, it makes it easier, but it also makes it harder because then you have to work a lot harder to kind of maintain the standard of visual appeal to keep people there. There are things working for it and working against it.
Yeah, and there's also the risk that, let's say you make Transmaxxing content, you're like a public person, like they will find you eventually. Like if you have your face.
But does it really matter? Like, look at the somebody in Transmaxxing has to stand up to the whole gender dysphoria thing and just say, I just did this because I wanted to gain attention or like you're already starting to see it in what I call the drag maxing community. You're starting to see it in people like Finster, right? He's like, well, I'm just going to dress up as a girl because that's going to get me views and make me money, and and then once he does that, then other people do it too. And then that starts to grow.
Regarding Transmaxxing, I actually was going to talk to you about it, but I forgot it, so it was good you brought it up. I believe that this can be beneficial to do this cross-dressing, and it has the benefit that you don't get to deal with often negative effects from HRT. So for example, if you want to have children, or if you don't want to be like a female 24/7, then you can do this completely reversible thing where you dress up.
I spoke to Kat about digital drag maxing. So what's going to happen is, you could have an identity online. So, Val, if she wants to go online, she could put on a filter and look completely different and still speak, and nobody would be able to recognize her. So that would totally work, right? Like in terms of keeping your anonymity, creating a specific look that you want people to see and projecting that out there. It may not even be real. It could be something completely created. So I think that's, if people believe that it's real, it's all that matters, because then the whole thing will start to grow. So those are the directions that I would be heading in right now. So I would be, like let's say I would do digital drag max. So what I would do is I would use a voice filter, and I would use a like face filter and age filter. And what I would do is I would put on a wig, make a girly background, and then just use the voice changer, and I would use the the face filter, and then that way I would appear 100% passable and talking about these issues from like talking about drag max. Nobody would know who or what I was. I could basically promote these ideas in an articulate way, gain a fan base, interject some humor, and then it would grow.
I think that the drag maxing idea works actually better online. It works less well in real life because without hormones. And
I agree. That's why I said digital drag maxing, because what's going to happen is most people spend most of their time online now. They don't even go in real life as much as they used to. So the majority of our time is now spent in the virtual world. So what we look like virtually is more important than what we look like physically.
I mean, not when it comes to like intimate relationships. So this might be what might happen is that digital drag maxing and transmaxing end up winning, and it squeezes out this IRL drag maxing because nobody really wants to do that. So you only end up with like VTubers and people are like cat girls online, and then we end up with the transmaxing who completely changes their bodies, and then there are not too many people like in the middle who try to with makeup and stuff, which you cannot do for too long, because as you age, like even Finster will kinda probably be fucked up like later in life, so he will not be able to continue doing this thing, because like he will pass worse and worse over time because of testosterone.
Okay, but here's the thing. If he puts on a teenage filter and he puts on a feminization filter using software, he could keep doing it until his 30s, 40s, 50s, and no one would know. Nobody would care. Because new people would discover him. I was in relationships where a girlfriend, she would put on makeup, and then she would take the makeup off, and it would look like two completely different people, right? It didn't really bother me like at all. Like I found her attractive regardless. Some people I don't find attractive when they're not wearing their makeup. So putting the digital makeup on, if you see them in it with the digital makeup and that makes you attracted, how is that different than somebody getting a nose job or somebody getting, some kind of other like alteration to their face to make them more attractive?
That's an interesting question. I think people prefer a more physical experience with not without a lot of technology. But I also think that we have to realize that many people don't have this option for the real thing. Let's say, take gold for example. Like a lot of people want real physical gold, but a lot of people cannot justify because it's too expensive. They have to do like fake gold because they cannot afford real gold. And this is kind of what we are seeing with relationships. We're seeing all these coups that people do because they cannot attract the real thing. So they have to do some fakery like porn, for example.
I totally agree with you. And, I get accused of cope all the time. And so do many other people, like so many other guys that kind of go their own way. There's a small group of guys that go their own way that have had long-term relationships. They've seen what those things do to them, like mentally and psychologically in the long run. We just choose to be single because it's a lot better. It works for us. It can be ourselves, and we don't have to constantly white knight and project something that we're not.
Yeah, what I will say about this is that I think some people, for a lot of people, they have like great relationships and they are happy with that. But also, if you are less attractive, it will be harder to find a good partner because you are less to choose from, and often the ones you get are the ones that are least attractive. So for many of these people, it might not feel worth it to pursue this relationship that you could maybe get because it's just not worth it. So we have this, I see this thing where people say that MGTOW are selling the Nile. I actually think that a lot of MGTOWs are actually near cells, which is different but still very relevant, because you can be a person that can get laid sometimes, but it will be with someone who is like not attractive, might have a unpleasant personality, might be too old.
No, that's exactly why MGTOW kind of rose up, because had the boomer men who came before Gen X and like the first half of Gen X and the boomers, they wanted to go back to traditionalism because they could find the attractive women, they could be with them, and they were satisfied. Now the biggest problem for them was they couldn't, these women would leave them at some point. They were always scared of being left by the women that they wanted to be with. And then once MGTOW came around, the population pyramid at the bottom started to kind of narrow, and that meant that the quality of women that men in that like second half of Gen X and the first half of millennials, the quality of the women that was available was a lot lower. So there was a lot more to complain about, and that's why a lot of guys chose to go their own way. It's not, they weren't sent going their own way. They just said, look, like, this is what I got to choose from, and it's not very pleasant. It's not very good. I would just rather do my own thing. And that's so. But now you have the next generation after that, the second half of the millennials and the early Zoomers, and now all of a sudden they're saying there's nothing out here. Like, even if we wanted something like bad, it's not here, right? So now the population pyramid is just collapsing even more at the bottom. So it's like I don't blame them for walking away before there's nothing to walk away from, right? So it's hence incels, right?
Yeah, but the thing with incels, there is just not this divide between incels and near cells, Because if you're really crude, you can say that you can just like go gay, for example. This is like the extreme. But we are being real here, people don't want that. And same, let's say you can get
People,
like...
what do you mean go gay? People can't just convert their sexuality at no, like, for no reason. Like, it's
yeah, but you can like have sex with men anyway, even though you don't find them attractive. There was actually a case of that in the Transmaxxing manifest. So the first story said like someone who tried doing it and it just didn't work for obvious reasons.
Look, if you find somebody you're not attracted to, I've been with a few women that I was not attracted to, and after a while, I decided I'm getting the hell out of here, and that was it. Right? It just did not work. Like their personalities, I liked who they were, but I didn't find them satisfying visually 100%. Right? So like, there was maybe like 10% of them that I didn't like in terms of their like physical appearance. So I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. That you're totally right about that. But at the same time, there are women that are visually appealing, but then they may have mental issues, right? They might have some kind of other problem. So from a variety of dating, I would always choose the ones that had psychological mental issues compared to the ones that I was not physically attracted to. So if she was crazy, well, crazy was just a complete like no-no. Like, women who had depression or self-esteem issues or like stuff like that, those women would be acceptable if I was attracted to them. Ones that were bossy and controlling, I would not go anywhere near. The ones that I was unattracted to, like, I would date them briefly and then I'd be like, no, and I would like kind of leave them too. So but what I'm saying is now the incels out there, they don't have those three choices. They don't have any choices for the most part.
What I see is that I see more and more desperation, also like people moving to other places. This is not like the new trend now, which I've foreseen. I was actually thinking about that location maxing. Yeah, geomaxing, sorry. Yeah, and this is like the new desperate strategy that people will try, and this will like fuck over the natives in these countries because then they have more competition instead. So like you just move around the problem. So like as males lower the standards, this becomes even worse because now people compete for land whales too. So,
yeah, I know. There's like you see these muscular guys competing for land whales. It's kind of funny to see in the West. And again, geomaxing doesn't work because the female nature is the same everywhere. So even if they, like, I think there was a crazy Andrew Tate, another one that came out a couple days ago. He's like, oh, just if you want to have a family, go to East Asia or go to South America, have a family there. Then don't bring the wife and kids back home. Just say like, see you later, I'm going home, and then go visit, and that's it. Don't bring them back to your Western country. And so that's his solution, and so he's basically promoting that solution on a lot of Western men. But that's not a solution long term. That's just until feminism takes over those Southeast Asia and Latin America. And then even that solution is not going to work anymore. What's he going to say then? Oh, just don't have a family. Or you know what he's going to say? He's going to say, go and pay for a gestational surrogate and have a kid without getting married and without actually having a wife. And then you'll say, well, what about sexual gratification? And he'll say, well, just have sex with one of these robots. And I think that's where we're heading. Like there's, if you can get the same physical sensation from a machine, I don't think you can, and I know you don't either. But a lot of these younger guys think they can. They believe it. They strongly believe it. And if all it takes is belief, personal belief, and if the uncanny valley has been passed, then they'll believe it, right? They won't know if she's real or not. Like if you go into a room and there's 3 women in there and 2 of them are fake and 1 is real, but they all look similar, how can you figure out which one's real and which one's not? Right? So once technology becomes indistinguishable from reality, then I think that a lot of young guys are going to adopt it more than anything. Because the alternative is going to be these nasty, bitchy, overweight, like unattractive, foul-mouthed feminist women, and they're just going to be like, no, we don't want to go anywhere near them. And the more they don't go near them, the less those women are going to care about their appearance. So their appearance is going to get worse and worse, and guys are just going to be like, I'm attracted to femininity, not this like Hulk Hogan with like as Tate said, Hulk Hogan with vagina.
Yeah, actually have a point here. I think part of the appeal with trans females is that trans females want to be feminine, for at least for the most part. So they want to be this often hyper feminine females, and they end up.
Exactly. So they're gonna attract a lot of guys who want something real and it's hyper feminine, right? Because the thing is, as a guy, I've been with women who they're feminine, but like a lot of the time they just like present masculine, but they just like they dress like a slob. They don't like care too much, so they do what the traditional like lazy male would do. Just not care too much about their appearance. That's not very attractive for most guys. They want somebody that's constantly visually appealing and that's going to, that they're attracted to, right? So, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and I also think that transmaxing will become increasingly appealing if females keep raising the standards and your options get like worse and worse. So let's say your option is like a land whale, you can get it as a girlfriend, or you can like transmax and you can become like find some hot trans lesbian girlfriend, and you can have like better sex. Like a lot of males are going to prefer that over the land whale, and then it comes down to are you going to like put up with the land whale just to have a child, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. So you're going to start to see. That's why I think there's going to be guys who go for the land whales. Then there's going to be the guys who go for the robots, and there's going to be guys who go for the transmaxers. I think it's just going to be like going to be a lot more options. It's going to be guys who go do the geomaxing thing. I think that there's not going to be like a one size fits all solution. No pun intended with the land whales, right? So I just think that you're going to start to see this kind of splinter off, and guys will be like, well, you're gay because you're into trans women, and another guy's like, well, you're messed up in the head because you're into robots, and the other guy's like, well, you've got like self-esteem issues because you're dating a land whale. Right? It's going to be like everyone's just going to be like attacking everyone else for their preferences.
I think it's very important when it comes to transitioning that this is not a solution for everyone. This is a solution that works really well for some people, but unfortunately it's not really to a general of a solution. There is the issue right now that if you start transitioning late, you are kind of screwed because you cannot reverse masculinization that has already happened. So you have to start early to get a good result. And then there is the fertility issue. And maybe like
you freeze your
yeah,
sperm and you should be okay.
Yes, you can freeze your sperm, and you can also just stop HRT. But both these methods are kind of impractical, because if you freeze sperm or you find like a girlfriend, like she might not want to go to that like IVF clinic to get impregnated. This is like too far, and she'd rather have someone else, some more convenient method. So this is like the issue because these females are kind of picky and lazy for the most part, so they might not be willing to go through the trouble just to have a child. So then your option that is actually more realistic is just stopping HRT for a while to make females pregnant. You can probably do that and still remain feminine if you like let's say you start transitioning like 16, then you go off HRT later. For a year or two, like you will still be fine in terms of femininity afterwards. And it takes 3 months maybe to get the fertility back. So like both methods are kind of suboptimal, but yeah. It's not impossible, I agree.